Good afternoon, guys. Thank you for joining me. Guys, if you've not done so already, can you please like and share my stuff? It really helps me out when you guys do that. And share this to people that are saying these things are not happening. You know, those people who are too fixated on their 9 to 5 job to look up to realize that the world is absolutely in flames. Now, today, guys, we're going to be talking about the United States. How by March they were ready to fight a nuclear war on 3 fronts. We're going to talk about Russia changing their nuclear doctrine to potentially make it more acceptable to use nuclear weapons. We're going to talk about the Ukrainians confirming their first kills over Ukraine. We're going to be talking about the EU now mulling sending troops into Ukraine, so boots on the ground proper now. We're also going to be talking about why the Belarusians are massing troops on the Belarus-Ukrainian border. We're also going to be talking about what the White House have said, basically that Iran is still poised to strike Israel. And to top all that off, guys, we're going to be talking about why the United States is pledging to defend Israel at all costs. Guys, I'm going to be flicking from my notes on my screen and to you guys. Don't worry about it. I'm just going to read a couple of short articles. I'm going to go with the headline, and then I'm going to give you my my speculation, my analysis, and I'm going to try and fit all this together. Guys, somebody asked me in the in the messages, not in the messages, in the comments. When is World War III actually happening? There's a strong argument that we're already in it. Ask yourself this question. If the mainstream media now started saying we're in World War III, would you think we're in World War III? Yes, even if there was no more escalations. Now, the counter to that is you wouldn't think we're in World War III unless somebody told you was in World War III. All around the world, we've got these huge hotspots, spiraling out of control. And yes, we've got David Lammy to go and, one of you guys put a comment in, why am I being overcritical in David Lammy? And I'll come to it when I start talking about Sergei Lavrov. But, we've got a political class in the United Kingdom, which is probably the worst certainly in my living memory. We've got, conflict and deep-rooted subversion in all Western countries to such a stage where we can't even agree what a woman is, and how are we supposed to fight a war? How are we supposed to deter our enemies when we can't even decide what a woman is? But anyway, guys, let's get on to it. Let's talk about the United States first. So this is an article from the 20th. The New York Times has reported that in March, President Joe Biden ordered the Pentagon to get ready for a coordinated nuclear confrontation with Russia, China, and North Korea. Now, I think right now you could probably add Iran to that list. It appears the administration is also willing to increase the number of deployed nuclear weapons. So I think we spoke about this, about how, the United States are giving the green light for other countries to house their nuclear weapons. And then it kind of went silent and we didn't hear anything else about it. So in my analysis, that would mean that, Poland's probably got nuclear weapons now. There's probably more nuclear weapons in the Baltic states, especially Finland. The United Kingdom, we have a lot of American nuclear weapons. And there was a lot of footage online around that time of, these trucks, these guys, you couldn't make it up. I've done security all my life, and the main thing that keeps you safe is your ambiguity. Ambiguity. Now, what I mean by that is if people don't know something's there, they won't attack it. That goes with everything. And then when I saw these, what I can only assume were, the nuclear trucks with the nuclear weapons, they looked like guys. It really looked like you'd expect a 90s B movie to deploy nuclear weapons. They were in these big black trucks that were all black and everything was black, and then the police were there being overly aggressive. And I just thought, wow, is that really how we transport nuclear weapons? Guys, if it was me, I would do it very low key. I'd do it in unsuspecting vehicles. I'd do it in Eddie Stobart vehicles. I would do this and nobody would know they were being moved. But, there was a lot of third-party awareness, a lot of camera phones, a lot of people recording these. So What I think it's safe to say now is there's plans in the United States to fight a nuclear war on 3 fronts. Now there's a strong argument for this to be on 4 fronts, and I'll come on to why 4 fronts in a moment. But switching to Russia now, Sergei Lavrov has come out. So I'll read all these articles. I'll put in the description, guys. Sergei Lavrov. He's somebody I think he's a big player in the Russian administration. He's older than dust. He's been there a long time, and he's their foreign minister. So he would be David Lammy's equivalent. Now, if you understand, if you ever listen to Sergei Lavrov talk, his intellect, his articulation, his determination, he's a heavyweight in the world of politics. And then our guy is David Lammy. Right, and that's all I'm going to say. And when people say, "Why are you so, why do you give, our politicians so much hassle?" Because these are the people they're up against. These are the people who they're going to have to negotiate with. These are the people who they're going to have to make friendships with. These are the people who they're going to have to, negotiate and stand up for the British interests. And quite frankly, I don't feel we have anybody in government that can do this, guys. And I know this is an unpopular opinion. I feel David Cameron would have been able to go and negotiate with Sergei Lavrov. Agree with me if you want, don't if you want. But that's and I think there's a lot of intellectual weight behind that. David Cameron, he's been around, he knows what he's talking about, and he commands a certain presence about him, which David Lammy just doesn't. Anyway, sorry, I go on. So the article here, Russia warns United States of the risk of World War III. He then goes on and says, he mentions something about the United States are like children playing in a playground with matches or something. And like everything, guys, the interesting bits, you have to go scroll down past the headlines. Lavrov also added that Russia was clarifying its nuclear doctrine. So for those of you who've been following this channel, you know that from 2010, the Russian nuclear doctrine was set as such that Russia would be authorized to use nuclear weapons if Russian, the Russian civilization, the Russian way of life, Russia mainland, Russia proper, was under existential threat. Which yesterday's video I said, right, so why haven't they used nuclear weapons? So from this, guys, we can see now, Lavrov said that Russia's clarifying its nuclear doctrine. Russia's 2020 nuclear doctrine, well, that's that, guys, I think they've been 2010. Anyway, nuclear doctrine sets out when its president would consider using a nuclear weapon, broadly as a response to attack using nuclear or other weapons of mass destruction or conventional weapons, when the very existence of the state is put under threat. Yes, so I think that's a typo there, guys. I think they mean 2010 because that's when it was from. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So this is what they're reviewing at the moment, and it's really interesting that Sergei Lavrov's come out and he said this. What do I think is going to happen? Well, I think they're going to lower the bar. I think they're going to lower the bar on what can be used, what can be nuclear weapons. Now, people say, why don't they just use them? Why don't they just use them? Well, I'll give you an example. And I know it's not Russia, it's Ukraine. But that part of the world, they're very strict to orders and, policy and procedures. Yes, of course, Putin can say, right, pick up the phone, send a missile. Yeah, he can do that. But I remember, speaking to, when I used to have to go and have meetings with people in Ukraine. I know Ukraine's not Russia, but a lot of the old systems back then, certainly in 2014, they were operating on a lot of old Russian systems. I'd be speaking with a guy and I'd need to have access to a location. And I'd say, oh, can I get in there? And he'd say, you need permission. I'd say, who do I need permission from? He'd tell me the person in government who I need permission from. I said, okay. So I phoned up on my little Nokia 3310 or whatever it was. I managed to get through to him. I'd say, yep, okay, yep, right, okay, I've got permission. He'd speak to him. He'd say, yep, right, okay, we've got permission. And then he'd say, oh, I can't let you in now yet. I'd say, why not? He says, because there needs to be a telegram come through, not like a messaging service on your phone, Telegram, an actual telegram. So this would be like beep, 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 and a piece of paper would get printed off. I'd say, what? He'd say, yeah, that's the procedure. I'd say, you just spoke to him on the phone. He said, oh, it doesn't matter. That's the procedure. So then I'd have to wait 3 or 4 hours for this telegram to get sent if I finally get in. But that's just, anecdotal. So I do understand why they're changing these things. They're changing these things so people can look at them and it's not such a big shock. And then people understand when they can and can't use these nuclear weapons. I'm surprised these things have not been used yet. I'm really surprised a low-yield tactical nuclear weapon hasn't been used yet. There's some people saying that that if you go and check the ground in eastern Ukraine, in the Donbass region, you'll find radiation, and which is evidence that a low-yield system has been used. Now, I wouldn't be able to confirm that, but people are speculating. What I would say with the low-yield tactical nuclear weapons is you don't have to have a sophisticated launch system. You can literally just put them in the back of a truck, drive them somewhere, and and detonate them on a timer or radio, whatever. So that's from the Russian front. That's what the Russian perspective is. Now, the F-16s, it's been reported, F-16s have scored their first kill. The Nimble jet reportedly shot down at Russian cruise missiles on Monday. So again, what we've been saying is once these F-16s start flying, and you can argue now who's piloting these things, because the Americans put out a call saying, if anybody has F-16 experience and they want to go and fight for freedom in eastern Ukraine, put your names forwards and yada, yada, yada. So what we can assume from that is that there is a number of F-16 pilots now either on their way to Ukraine, already in Ukraine, potentially even flying these things. We don't know. And the way the battlefield is, as long as these guys don't get shot down over Russia, how are they ever going to know who's actually piloting that aircraft? And that's the reality. With the legal system and the legal precedence of the Ukrainian Foreign International Legion, I don't know what they're calling it, basically foreign fighters. The foreign fighters can be, the pilots can be inducted into this system just like, the fighters are, and then they would not be foreign fighters. Sorry, they would not be American pilots. They would then be, on paper, they would be Ukrainian pilots. So Zelensky can say, yes, these are all Ukrainian pilots, but the reality is whoever's behind that in that cockpit, we don't know. What we do know, though, is now these things are flying and they're being effective. Now we can argue how effective they are. But if the Russians perceive these as being an effective threat, the Russians then need to make the decision. Do we take out all the runways? And you wouldn't just take out one runway; you take them all out simultaneously. It makes no sense to pussyfoot around this. Which then leaves the next move, the next play, the next gambit, I guess, would be then for Poland to say, right, okay, you can fly them from our bases. And I've told you how this is going to happen. I told you for such a long time. Let me see what's the. Let's see if I've got it here. Right. You know what? I'll do this next. I'll do this not in the order I said it. So that's what's happening with the F-16s. They are being used. The Russians have now got the choice. Do they take out the runways? Because it's pointless taking out the aircraft. You can replace the aircraft. You need to take out the airfield. You need to take out the infrastructure. You need to take out that whole repair, servicing, refueling. You need to make them unflyable from within Ukraine, which then leads us on to remember a couple of days ago, I think, what day was it? I can't remember, when the Russian drone, and again, we don't know if this happened, all we know is what the media are reporting, but when it was reported that the Russian drone was inside Polish airspace, I think for 30 minutes or something. Now, this leads back to the previous things I've said back in, I think it was February, when, the Polish pilot, he came out, he said, oh, if we could just get up and intercept, we'd be able to shoot down and save these people. Now there's more weight for Polish pilots to be flying defensive sorties over Ukraine, because the Polish will claim, well, these drones keep coming into our airspace and we need to shoot them down. So we've got permission from Ukraine and we're just going to come a little bit into Ukraine's airspace, and then we're going to shoot down these drones. And as soon as that happens, that is the green light for the Ukrainian F-16s to be flown from the same air bases, exactly the same, none of these aircraft will have transponders on. It will be near on impossible for the Russians to tell, is that a Ukrainian F-16 leaving on an offensive mission, or is that a Polish F-16 leaving on a defensive mission? And guess what? Every F-16 that gets shot down, guess what? It will be a Polish F-16 on a defensive mission. That's what's going to happen, guys, all right? You know, my speculation, my opinion, so you can't get me done for fake news. I have to say that for legal reasons, but that's the way I feel we're going. And what we can see now is, you know, we can see these breadcrumbs or these little, these little footsteps leading that direction. So the EU now is Moll's training soldiers inside Ukraine. The request comes from Kiev. Remember what we said about Pokrovsk. In fact, let me try and share this with you guys. Let me see what the situation is in Pokrovsk. Let me do that. Let me do this quickly, guys. Sorry, I should have had this already set up for you guys, but I've been doing work on my extension. Right. So where are we? 27th. I think the 24th was the last time. Yeah, let me share this with you now, guys. So the 24th, I think, was the last time I shared this with you. So let me do this. Hang on. I'm coming, don't worry. Right, so this is the key here, guys, Pokrovsk. Let me zoom in. So this is the key here, guys, Pokrovsk. I think that when Pokrovsk falls, and honestly, I feel it inevitable at this point. When Pokrovsk falls, I feel the EU or France or whoever it is, I feel they're going to have to send NATO boots on the ground. I'll talk about that after, but this is from, if you look here, guys, this is what the situation on the ground was. In fact, let's go right back to the 8th, I think it was the 6th or the 8th, but we'll go back to the 8th. So this was the situation on the 8th, guys. This is where the Russians were on the 8th, when the day the Ukrainians went into Russia. Now I'm just going to fast forward now to the 24th. Look at the ground they are taking on a daily basis. And you can't even see it all because it's come down there. So look at the amount of ground they've taken, guys. And that's just to the 24th, okay? So let's zoom into where we are today. Guys, so they are literally, wow, guys, they are taking a phenomenal amount of ground there. Every day, this is getting closer to Pokrovsk. Now, the reason I'm sharing that with you is because what we've said before, and let me share this article with you as well, guys, while I've got the sharing thing up. So we said before, didn't we, that, you know, the tests for sending NATO troops into Ukraine and we talked about Zelensky and Macron. We said, if there are significant gains in the east, which if Pokrovsk falls, I don't think there's any argument there. If Pokrovsk falls, not just is it a huge point on the ground, it's a strategic junction with the 2 railroads that go into it and the 2 main supply routes that come out of it. So where are we, guys? There we are. So look at this here, guys. So this is from, I think, today. Is it from today? Yeah, 27th. Yeah, so this is from the 27th, which is yesterday. EU Moll's training soldiers inside Ukraine. The request comes from Kiev. So Kiev are already requesting it, as per this article. So remember what we've said, those 2 tests. If the Ukrainians lose significant ground in the east, and if the Ukrainians ask for it, well, you can see what's happening in the east, guys. I've just shown you in real time there. There's a lot of ground being lost on a daily basis. The Kiev, Ukraine, they've already asked the EU to send NATO boots on the ground. Now, I don't think NATO boots will be fighting initially. What will happen is they will move up and there will be a relief in place. So let's get the map back up, guys. Let's get the map back up. Why? Because we can, and it's already up. Where is it? Let's get this map up. So where are we? Right, so that's Pokrovsk there, guys. So what I think would happen, if you look at Ukraine in general, so you've got Poland and you've got Ukraine here, guys. So what I think would happen, I think NATO troops would come in, they would saturate this ground here. So they take this northern border here with Belarus right up to the Dnipro, and then they would, you know, they would have some fortifications down here on the by what's this one, Transnistria. You know, and they would basically, you know, free up space so the Ukrainians could then push into the Donbass region, potentially into the Sumy region, into the Kursk region, and that would then give the Ukrainians that morale boost. It would give the Ukrainians, you know, extra manpower because they don't have to man this border with Belarus. Now, that's how it would start. But then we start coming into the grounds of, okay, we're there as relief in place. We're doing a training mission. We're doing, you know, medical training. We're doing we've got a field hospital, etc., etc. And you get something which is called mission creep. And you get mission creep in every conflict. Now, what mission creep would be? I think it would start by, you know, the training missions would be part of training. You do mentoring as well. So when you do military basic training, you don't just, you know, you don't just sit in a classroom and your instructor tells you everything and then he goes, right, off you go. No, that's not how it works. Your instructor will give you the lessons and then your instructor will come out on the ground with you, and then your instructor will, you know, they do mentoring. So your instructor will be there with you, telling you what to do, telling you what to do in what circumstances. So you've always got somebody there with that experience, training and mentoring. So then that blurs the line then between where that mentoring is. Do you do, you know, mentoring as exercises in Lviv? Do you do training and mentoring in Kiev? Or do you do training, task-specific training in Kiev and then push forwards and do operational mentoring right out on the front line, conducting live operations and live mentoring where you can get live feedback and, you know, and then you can have a better training relationship with your students. Guys, I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm speculating for legal reasons. I can't say anything, but that's how I feel mission creep in those circumstances would move forwards. So, you know, we can see these things creeping forwards daily and daily. Now, if you remember, I talked about the that northern border with Belarus. Well, at the moment, the Belarusians are amassing huge amounts of troops on that border. I personally, my opinion is that it's a feint. I don't think the Belarusians have the intention to cross over that border. That border is heavily mined. It's heavily fortified. You know, you would have to be a buffoon to try and cross over that border without some serious demining, kinetic demining equipment. I just don't think the Belarusians have that. That said, they may have, I don't know. What would be interesting is if the Belarusians could, I'm not going to go back onto the map, but if the Belarusians could push down into a place called Zhytomyr, which would then, I'm not going to show you the map, guys, but basically Zhytomyr is just west of Kiev. If the Belarusians could punch down and take Zhytomyr and make a land corridor, that would literally sever all, you know, all east-west logistics routes, and it would make the things a lot more difficult for the Ukrainians to resupply, get things to the front, move troops east and west for training, for mentoring, for, you know, whatever they need to do. Now, I think that is, you know, I really do. I think that's just a feint. I think that's just something that they're doing. So Zelensky and his generals have to think, right, okay, the Belarusians are massing troops. Do we pull troops from the east and push them there? Do we pull troops out of the Kursk region and reinforce the northern border? Or do we just leave them? Well, I think that, guys, I think the Ukrainians are just going to leave it for two reasons. If the situation looks more dire, then the European Union are more likely to send troops into that region. And remember, that is one of the regions that the NATO troops would be, you know, that's where they would be going. They'd be, you know, fortifying that northern border, you know, securing the supply routes. They'd be doing, you know, field medicine, you know, and they would then relieve the, it's called a relief in place or a RIP. You know, and then that relieved the Ukrainians to go forwards and, you know, do some, you know, in the actual combat zone. So that's the situation where we are with Belarus. Now, the White House have come out in the last 24 hours, I think. Yeah, last 24 hours. General Charles Q. Brown, chairman of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff. The White House says Iran still poised to attack Israel as top general says war fears have eased. So remember what we've said on this channel, guys, all right? You've got to understand the culture. You've got to understand the culture in these nations. You know, they don't have a nation like, for example, the United Kingdom, where we have Keir Starmer, who says he's not going to cut winter fuel allowance and then cuts winter fuel allowance. You know, where Keir Starmer, you know, guys, I could literally give you an hour about Keir Starmer, things he said, and then like 2 days later, he goes back on it, you know. So it's not like the West. The culture in the Middle East isn't like the West. You know, they go from the, you know, from the Quran. Remember what we said? We said, you know, in the Quran, it says that if you retreat or show a withdrawal, then you will suffer, what were the words? Like, I think it's divine retribution. I, for one, do not want to suffer any divine retribution, you know, but this is what this is the culture that the Iranian leaders are, that's the culture they live in. So when they say they're going to attack, it means they're going to attack. Now, I think the reason why they haven't attacked yet is because I think they're waiting for a coordinated attack with the Russians. Now, if you remember back, I've talked about this a few times when I talked about the Americans. I talked about House Resolution 559, which states that nuclear-armed Iran it's an unacceptable threat to regional security or something like that. So here you can see, you know, the world shaping up for the United States and its allies to be fighting a nuclear war on 4 fronts. Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran. And guys, that's not a good world to be in, is it? You know, so, you know, there we go, guys. So that's what the White House is saying, you know, that Iran is still poised to make this attack. They're just holding off. My speculation is, like I just said, I think they're going to do a big coordinated attack, potentially with Russia, you know, but who knows? You know, it's anybody's guess at this point. Now, the White House, remember, I'll read you this. White House's Kirby says the US would defend Israel in an Iranian attack. Jerusalem, August 27th, Reuters, the United States remains committed to defending Israel in any Iranian attack and was hopeful about the possible Gaza ceasefire agreement. There's going to be no ceasefires, guys. Nobody's going to have a ceasefire. White House National Security spokesman said on Tuesday. So, you know, the United States, they're not making any, you know, the United States are not making any exceptions. They're not trying to pussyfoot around this. The United States are saying 100% they will back Israel regardless. So this is why now you've got the whole world is set. It looks like we've got this nuclear conflict brewing. If not, we've got, you know, mass tensions. We've got the Ukraine-Russia war, or is it now a Russia-Ukraine war? We've got the Belarusians mounting huge amounts of troops on the border. Like I just said, I think that's a feint. I don't think they're actually going to deploy that. And then we've got the absolute dystopia of the United Kingdom. And guys, I'm going to save the dystopia of the United Kingdom for another video. I'm going to do that next. But guys, like I said, if you've not done so already, please like, comment, subscribe, share, give me your opinions. If you think I'm wrong, tell me you think I'm wrong, but back it up with some reasoning, not just like showing you a wall, blah, 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 blah. Because, you know, don't be David Lammy, be more like Sergey Lavrov. Guys, that is it. I'm going to back to grid. I'd love to hear your comments. Please share my stuff. And if you've not done so, please give me a like and a subscribe.